My hands were inside a 7-year-old's chest cavity when my phone vibrated for the third time. "Dr. Cole, you need to focus," the head nurse said, but her eyes flicked toward my scrub pocket. I was focus. Timothy Harris had been rushed in after a car accident crushed his sternum. One wrong move and I'd nick his heart. But whoever was calling had tried 3 times in 4 minutes. "Almost done," I muttered, placing the final suture. "There. Let's close him up." 20 minutes later, I stood in the scrub room, finally checking my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then a text. "Dr. Cole, this concerns your father, Maxwell Cole. Urgent. Please call." My father. I hadn't spoken that word in reference to an actual person in 15 years. The woman on the phone introduced herself as Patricia Whitmore, attorney for Maxwell Cole Enterprises. "Your father is dying," she said, clinical and direct. "Stage 5 kidney failure. He needs a transplant within 6 months." I walked toward the hospital parking lot, phone pressed to my ear. "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope he finds a donor. Dr. Cole, we've tested his immediate family. His children from his second marriage aren't matches. His siblings are too old. Due to a rare genetic marker, you are his only viable option." I stopped walking. "You tested me?" "From medical records. Your consent forms from." "That's a HIPAA violation." A pause. "Mr. Cole is prepared to compensate you significantly. $5 million for the procedure." $5 million. That was more than I'd make in 5 years. I could pay off my medical school loans, fund the clinic I'd dreamed of opening in underserved neighborhoods. "I need to think about it," I said. "Mr. Cole's condition is deteriorating rapidly." Then he should have thought about that 30 years ago. I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing my mother's face. I was 4 when he left. I barely remembered him, just fragments. A man in an expensive suit who smelled like cologne. A briefcase clicking shut. My mother crying in the kitchen while I hid behind the couch. What I remembered clearly was everything after. The eviction notices. My mother working 3 jobs. The night she collapsed from exhaustion at the grocery store where she worked as a cashier. Me at 8 years old, learning to cook rice and eggs because she'd come home too tired to stand. "Your father is building something important," she'd say when I asked why he never called. Even then, she protected him. She died when I was 19. Kidney disease. Stage 4 by the time they caught it because she couldn't afford regular doctor visits. She was on the transplant list for 6 months before her body gave up. I became a surgeon because I never wanted another kid to watch their parent die from something preventable. And now Maxwell Cole, the man who chose his empire over his family, needed the exact organ that killed my mother. I couldn't help myself. I looked him up. Maxwell Cole, founder and CEO of Titan Core Technologies, worth $3.2 billion. He'd started the company the year after he left us, building algorithms that revolutionized data processing. He'd married Veronica St. James, a pharmaceutical heiress, within 2 years of abandoning us. They had 3 children, twins Nathaniel and Vanessa, now 27, and youngest daughter Beatrice, 24. His Wikipedia page had a section called Personal Life that mentioned his early first marriage in 1 sentence. I wasn't even named. I dug deeper. News articles from the divorce. My mother had filed when I was 6, asking for child support. Maxwell's lawyers buried her in paperwork, claiming his assets were tied up, his company was failing, he could barely afford rent. This was while he was closing his Series B funding for $40 million. The court awarded my mother $400 a month. She received 2 payments, then they stopped. She couldn't afford a lawyer to chase him. I found photos of him at galas, his new family smiling in designer clothes. Nathaniel's Harvard graduation. Vanessa's wedding to a senator's son. Beatrice competing in equestrian championships on horses worth more than my mother's funeral. Patricia Whitmore called again 3 days later. "Dr. Cole, have you considered our offer?" "I have. And I'll do it. But not for $5 million. A pause. "Mr. Cole is prepared to negotiate." "I don't want money," I said. "I want conditions." "I'm listening." "First, Maxwell Cole will publicly acknowledge me as his son. A press release, on company letterhead, admitting he abandoned me and my mother. That could affect stock prices. I'm not finished. Second, he'll provide a full accounting of every asset he hid during the divorce proceedings, along with calculated back child support with interest. Third, he'll transfer 40% of his shares in Titan Core to me before the surgery. Silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Dr. Cole, that's nearly $1.3 billion in assets. My mother died because she couldn't afford health care while he bought vacation homes. I think that's fair. I'll present this to Mr. Cole. You have 48 hours. After that, he can find another donor. Maxwell Cole agreed to meet me in person. Patricia arranged it at his penthouse in Manhattan. I took the train from Boston, rehearsing what I'd say. Would he apologize? Would he try to charm me? Would he even recognize me? The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Art that belonged in museums. A grand piano no one probably played. Maxwell Cole sat in a wheelchair by the window. He'd aged badly, gray skin, sunken eyes, tubes running to a portable dialysis machine. But I could see my face in his. Same sharp nose. Same dark eyes. Adrian, he said. His voice was weaker than I'd imagined. Mr. Cole. He flinched. I suppose I deserve that. You deserve much worse. He nodded slowly. Your demands. They're aggressive. They're fair. 40% of my company. You'd be the largest single shareholder. Is that a problem? My other children won't take it well. Your other children. I let the words hang. You mean the ones you actually raised? His jaw tightened. I made mistakes. Mistakes? You didn't forget to call on my birthday. You systematically erased us from your life. You hid money so my mother couldn't feed me. She died because of you. I didn't. She died of kidney disease. Did you know that? The same disease killing you right now. But she couldn't afford treatment. She couldn't afford insurance. Because you made sure we had nothing. Maxwell looked at his hands. For a moment, I thought I saw shame. Then he looked up, and his eyes were calculating. I'll agree to your terms. But I need you to understand something. My other children are trying to have me declared incompetent. They want to take the company while I'm weak. If you do this, if you take that 40%, you'll have control. You can stop them. Why would I do that? Because you're not like them. You actually earned something with your life. I laughed bitterly. Don't try to bond with me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because watching you lose everything will be worth more than your kidney. Patricia drew up the papers. It took 3 weeks. During that time, I hired my own lawyers. I wanted every clause ironclad. Maxwell couldn't back out. The shares would transfer the moment the surgery was scheduled. The press release would go out 24 hours before the procedure. He's balking at the public acknowledgement, Patricia told me in week 2. Then he can die. Dr. Cole, please. My mother spent 15 years pretending he was going to come back. 15 years making excuses for him. He owes her the truth. Maxwell signed everything on a Thursday afternoon. I watched him scrawl his signature, his hand shaking. Whether from illness or anger, I couldn't tell. You know, he said, not looking up. You could have just taken the money. $5 million, no strings. Easy. I don't want easy. I want you to feel what my mother felt. Powerless. Stripped of everything you built. Knowing you did it to yourself. He met my eyes then. You're more like me than you think. I'm nothing like you. I save lives. You ruin them. While the lawyers worked, I started my own investigation. I reached out to Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice through LinkedIn, pretending to be interested in investment opportunities. They were surprisingly easy to contact. Entitled rich kids loved talking about money. Nathaniel agreed to coffee. We met at a cafe in Midtown. So you're the secret brother, he said, stirring his espresso. Dad's greatest shame. He told you about me? Mom did. During the divorce. She found out about you and lost it. Apparently, Dad was still married to your mother when he started dating her. Made the whole thing extra scandalous. I filed that away. What's he like as a father? Nathaniel laughed. Absent. Just in a different way. He was physically there but always working. Every dinner, every vacation, every school play, he was on his phone. We were props for his image. Then why are you trying to take his company? His smile disappeared. Who told you that? He did. Of course he did. Look, the man is losing his mind. Last board meeting, he couldn't remember basic financials. He's making erratic decisions. Someone needs to take control before he runs Titan Core into the ground. Or before he gives it to someone else. Nathaniel's expression hardened. We've earned that company. We grew up watching him build it. You showed up 2 months ago and suddenly you're getting 40%? That's theft. Interesting perspective from someone who never wondered where that wealth came from. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned forward. Did you know your father hid assets to avoid paying child support? That he used his lawyers to bury a woman barely surviving on minimum wage? Your college fund came from money he stole from a dying woman. Nathaniel stood up. This conversation is over. One more thing. The kidney. Do you know why none of you were matches? He paused. Because you're not his biological children. I was bluffing, but his face told me I'd struck something. He left without another word. I started pulling threads. Maxwell's divorce from Veronica had been sealed, but money can unseal almost anything. I paid a legal researcher $2,000 to dig through court records. What she found changed everything. Veronica had filed for divorce on grounds of fraud. She claimed Maxwell had lied about his finances, about his business practices, and about his fidelity. But there was more. A sealed affidavit mentioned medical fraud and falsified documents. The details were redacted, but it was enough to point me in a direction. I called an old friend from medical school who now worked in medical ethics law. Hypothetically, I said, if someone falsified paternity tests, how would you prove it? Why do you ask? Hypothetical case. Very hypothetical. She sighed. You'd need the original samples or documentation showing inconsistencies. But Adrian, if this is about what I think it's about. It's not. Medical fraud is serious. If someone knowingly falsified tests, especially for financial gain or to deceive in a legal proceeding, that's prison time. Prison time. I reached out to Veronica St. James, now Veronica Laurent, after remarrying a French vintner. She agreed to meet me in Paris. I flew out on a Friday, telling the hospital I needed a long weekend. Veronica was 60 but looked 45. Impeccably dressed, sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who'd seen everything. The abandoned son, she said, ordering wine. Maxwell must be desperate. He is. And I'm trying to understand who I'm saving. A monster. She said it without emotion. But you already know that. The divorce papers mentioned medical fraud. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. You've done your homework. Were Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice his biological children? No. The word hung between us. I was already pregnant when I met Maxwell. My ex-boyfriend, a nobody. Maxwell couldn't tolerate being associated with his image. So he paid a fertility doctor to falsify paternity tests. The children think Maxwell is their father. My ex died in a car accident 6 years ago. Why didn't you expose him? Because he threatened to take the children. His lawyers, his money, I couldn't fight it. So I accepted the settlement, signed the NDA, and got out. But you could testify now. Why would I? Because he's trying to paint you as the villain. And because your children deserve to know the truth. She studied me for a long moment. What's in it for you? Justice. She laughed. You're as ruthless as he is. Fine. I'll talk. But only after your surgery. I won't give him a reason to back out and take you down with him. The press release went out at 9 a.m. on a Monday. I was in surgery when it happened, but Patricia called the moment I was out. "It's everywhere," she said. She sounded panicked. I pulled up my phone. The headline was on every major news site. Billionaire Maxwell Cole admits to abandoning son, hiding assets in child support case. The statement was everything I'd demanded. Maxwell acknowledged leaving me and my mother. He admitted to concealing assets during the divorce. He announced that I would be receiving 40% of Titan Core shares as partial restitution for decades of neglect. The market reacted immediately. Titan Core stock dropped 8% in the first hour. My phone exploded with messages. Reporters, old colleagues, people I hadn't spoken to in years. I turned it off. Nathaniel went on CNBC that afternoon. "This is extortion," he told the anchor. "A man dying of kidney failure is being manipulated by someone who appeared out of nowhere. We're exploring all legal options." Vanessa posted on social media. "Family isn't about blood. It's about who raised you. This opportunist doesn't care about saving a life. He's only interested in money." Beatrice was quieter, but her lawyer released a statement questioning whether I was even qualified to be a donor, implying I might be lying about the genetic match. The court of public opinion was split. Half saw me as a victim finally getting justice. Half saw me as a vulture exploiting a dying man. I didn't care about either side. While the media frenzy raged, I kept digging. I'd become obsessed. Maxwell wasn't just a deadbeat dad, there was something darker. The pattern of his behavior, the way he covered tracks, the medical fraud with Veronica. I hired a private investigator named Carmen Torres, a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud. "What am I looking for?" she asked. "Anything that proves he's worse than we know." It took her 3 weeks. She called me at midnight. "You need to see this." We met at a diner in Brooklyn. She slid a folder across the table. "Your mother's insurance," Carmen said. "The claims she filed when she got sick." I opened the folder. Denial letters. Dozens of them. Every treatment my mother requested, denied. Every specialist referral, denied. Every appeal, denied. "Standard insurance company bullshit," I said. "Look at the company." I checked the letterhead. Healthbridge Insurance. So, Healthbridge was acquired by Meditech Solutions in 2005. Meditech was a subsidiary of Titan Core. My blood went cold. "Your father owned the insurance company that denied your mother coverage." I read through the documents again, my hands shaking. Treatments that should have been approved. Tests that would have caught her disease earlier. All denied by a company Maxwell controlled. "There's more," Carmen said. "I found internal emails. Someone flagged your mother's claims because of the last name, Cole. They forwarded them to executive review." Executive review. Maxwell personally signed off on the denials. I stormed into Maxwell's penthouse without an appointment. He was in bed now, too weak to sit up for long. Nurses hovered, but I dismissed them. "You killed her," I said. He looked at me with watery eyes. "What?" "My mother. You didn't just abandon us. You actively murdered her." "I don't." I threw the folder at him. Papers scattered across his bed. Healthbridge Insurance. You owned it. You personally denied her claims. His face went pale. Every treatment she needed. Every test that could have saved her. You made sure she was denied. "Why?" "Because you didn't want her coming after you for more money? Because she was an inconvenience." "Adrian." "She died begging for treatment you could have authorized with a phone call. While you were buying your second yacht, she was vomiting blood in an emergency room." "I didn't know," he whispered. "You signed the denials." "I signed thousands of documents." "I didn't." "You knew. The emails prove you knew. Your staff flagged her name. They sent it to you. You made a choice." Maxwell's breathing was labored. The heart monitor beside his bed beeped frantically. A nurse pushed past me. "You need to leave," she said. "You're causing him stress." "Good. I hope it kills him before I get the chance to save him." I didn't sleep for 3 days. The surgery was scheduled for next week. Everything was ready. The contracts were signed, the shares transferred. Maxwell had kept his end of the bargain. But now I knew the truth. He didn't just neglect my mother. He murdered her. And I was about to save his life. My colleagues noticed. "You look terrible," the head of surgery said. "Are you having second thoughts about the procedure?" "No. Yes. I don't know. It's normal to be nervous. But you're healthy. The risks are minimal." "It's not the risk I'm worried about." She studied me. "Do you want to back out?" Did I? I could keep the shares. Those were already transferred. The press release had already exposed him. I'd already won. But if I backed out now, he'd die. And despite everything, despite the rage, despite the evidence of his evil, could I live with letting him die? I'm a doctor. I took an oath. But I'm also a son. I called Carmen Torres again. "I need you to do something for me," I said. "Name it." The evidence about Healthbridge. The emails. The proof that Maxwell knew he was denying my mother's claims. I need it compiled into a report. For what? For the SEC, the FBI, and every major news outlet in the country. Silence. Then, when? Release it the day of my surgery. Time it for exactly when I'm in the operating room. Adrian, that's justice. He'll live, but he'll wake up to his entire empire collapsing. What about you? You'll be associated with this. I don't care. Let them think I timed it as revenge. They won't be wrong. The night before the surgery, Patricia Whitmore called. "Mr. Cole would like to see you." "No. Please, Dr. Cole. He wants to talk to you one more time. Before the procedure." I almost refused. But curiosity won. Maxwell looked worse than ever. The dialysis was barely keeping him alive. He was a ghost of the man I'd seen in photographs. "Thank you for coming," he rasped. I didn't sit. Didn't speak. "I know what you think of me," he continued. "You're right. About all of it. Is that supposed to be an apology?" "No. I don't expect forgiveness. I wanted you to understand." "Understand what?" "Why I left. Your mother and we were kids when we got married. I was 22, terrified, drowning in debt. When the business started taking off, I saw a way out. A chance to be someone. And I took it. By abandoning your family." "Yes. And every day after, it got easier to pretend you didn't exist. To build a new life. To convince myself I'd made the right choice." "And the insurance claims?" "My mother's treatment." He closed his eyes. "I told myself it was protocol. That I couldn't make exceptions. That it wasn't personal. It was murder." "Yes." The word hung in the air. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because tomorrow you're going to save my life. And I want you to know that I know I don't deserve it. That I'm not asking for redemption. I'm just grateful. Even though I have no right to be." I turned to leave. "Adrian." I stopped but didn't turn around. "Your mother was a better person than I'll ever be. And you are too. Don't let what I did make you into something you're not." "Too late," I said and left. The operating room was cold. I lay on the table in a hospital gown, for already in my arm. The anesthesiologist smiled down at me. "Count backward from 10, he said. 10, 9. I thought about my mother. Her face. Her hands. The way she hummed while cooking dinner. 8, 7. I thought about Maxwell. About the life he'd lived while we suffered. 6, 5. About Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice, who didn't know they'd been lied to their entire lives. 4, 3. About justice. About revenge. About the difference between the two. 2, 1. Darkness. I woke to voices. Nurses. Doctors. Pain in my side, dull, throbbing. The surgery was over. "Dr. Cole." A face swam into view. My surgical colleague, Dr. Patterson. The procedure went perfectly. You're going to be fine. Maxwell. Also stable. The transplant was successful. I closed my eyes. It was done. There's something else, Patterson said carefully. There's been a situation. The media has been trying to get into the hospital. Security is holding them back. But what time is it? 4 p.m. You've been under for 6 hours. 6 hours. Carmen's report had been released at noon. My phone, I said. Patterson hesitated, then handed it to me. 347 missed calls. 1,283 unread messages. The headlines were everything I'd hoped for. Maxwell Cole under federal investigation for insurance fraud. Billionaire denied life-saving treatment to ex-wife. Whistleblower claims. Titan core stock in freefall after fraud allegations. I smiled through the pain medication haze. Maxwell woke up 2 hours after me. I watched from my room as his children, the ones who thought they were his children, flooded into his wing. Shouting. Crying. Security had to intervene. Patricia came to my room, looking haggard. Did you know, she asked, about the report? The timing. You planned this. I don't know what you're talking about. The SEC has frozen all Titan core assets. The board is calling for Maxwell's immediate resignation. His children are filing lawsuits. You orchestrated this. I gave him a kidney. I kept my end of the bargain. You destroyed him. No, I exposed him. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long moment. I hope you can live with this. Better than he lived with what he did to my mother. Veronica kept her word. 3 days after the surgery, while I was still recovering, she held a press conference in Paris. I'm here to tell the truth about Maxwell Cole, she began. She detailed everything. The falsified paternity tests. The medical fraud. The coercion. She had documents, testimony, evidence. Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice's worlds imploded. They released a joint statement. They were cutting all ties with Maxwell. They were donating their inheritance to charity. They wanted nothing from a man who'd built his life on lies. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. The federal investigation moved quickly. Maxwell was indicted on 12 counts of insurance fraud, 3 counts of corporate malfeasance, and 2 counts of obstruction of justice. The trial wouldn't happen for months, but the evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers tried to argue that he'd been unaware of the specific denials, that his staff had made decisions without his knowledge. Then Carmen's report came out in full. Emails where Maxwell explicitly discussed the Cole woman and making sure she can't come back for more. Documents showing he'd ordered her claims flagged and denied at every turn. The prosecution was calling it death by bureaucracy. I preferred murder. 6 weeks after the surgery, Maxwell asked to see me. I'd been discharged and was recovering at home. The request came through Patricia, who was somehow still representing him despite everything. Why would I visit him? I asked. He's dying, Patricia said. The kidney is working, but the stress of the investigation, his heart is giving out. Good. Dr. Cole, Adrian, please. Whatever you think of him, he's still your father. He stopped being my father when I was 4 years old. But I went anyway. Maxwell was in a minimum security medical facility, awaiting trial. He looked ancient, 90 instead of 64. You came, he said when I walked in. Don't get sentimental. I'm only here to see if you've learned anything. He nodded slowly. I'm going to die in prison. Probably. The kidney you gave me, it'll outlive me. Ironic. Adrian, I need to tell you something. About your mother. I stiffened. Don't. Please. Just listen. Against my better judgment, I sat. When I left, I told myself she'd be fine. That she was strong, resourceful. That you'd both move on. I sent those first 2 child support payments thinking I was being generous. He laughed bitterly. $400. Like that would make up for anything. It didn't. When my lawyers told me she was struggling, I told them to handle it. Keep her at arm's length. Don't let her become a problem. And when her name showed up on those insurance claims years later, I saw it as proof that I'd been right to leave. That she was just looking for money. She was looking to survive. I know that now. But then, I'd convinced myself she was the villain in my story. That I was the victim, trapped by an early mistake. So I made sure those claims were denied. I told myself it was business. He looked at me with eyes full of tears. But it wasn't business. It was murder. You were right about that. I killed her as surely as if I'd put a gun to her head. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Your confession. No. Nothing can make this better. I just wanted you to know that I know. That I'm not deluding myself anymore. I stood to leave. Adrian. What? You gave me your kidney knowing all this. Why? I thought about it. About my mother. About the oath I'd taken. About the line between justice and revenge. Because I'm not you, I said finally. I couldn't let you die, even though you deserved it. Because that's not who I am. You're better than me. Everyone is better than you. 3 months later, Maxwell Cole died of a heart attack in his cell. His trial had been set to begin the following week. The prosecutors were disappointed. They'd wanted their day in court. The media was disappointed. They'd wanted the spectacle. I felt nothing. Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice didn't attend his funeral. Neither did Veronica. It was just me, Patricia, and a handful of Titan Core executives who felt obligated to appear. The priest gave a generic eulogy about redemption and forgiveness. He didn't know Maxwell, couldn't speak to who he really was. When it was over, Patricia approached me. He left you a letter, she said, handing me an envelope. I don't want it. Please. Just read it later. I took it but didn't open it. Not then. 6 months after Maxwell's death, I stood in front of a building in my old neighborhood. The place where my mother and I had lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment was gone, replaced by condos. But the neighborhood was still full of families struggling like we had. I'd used Maxwell's money, my 40% of Titan Core, which I'd sold the moment the investigation concluded, to establish the Sylvia Cole Memorial Foundation. My mother's name. Her legacy. The foundation provided free kidney disease screening, treatment, and transplants to families who couldn't afford them. Everything my mother had been denied. Inside the foundation's first clinic, I hung a photograph of her. Young, smiling, full of the hope that Maxwell had systematically destroyed. We did it, Mom, I whispered to the photo. That night, I finally opened Maxwell's letter. Adrian. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I don't expect you to mourn me. I don't expect anything from you anymore. I've spent my life building an empire, convinced that success would fill the emptiness I felt. It never did. I had everything, money, power, respect, and it was all worthless because I sacrificed the only things that mattered. You asked me why I left. The truth is, I was a coward. I saw you and your mother as anchors, weighing me down. I wanted to fly, and I thought cutting you loose would set me free. Instead, I spent 30 years in a prison of my own making. I had children who weren't mine, a wife I didn't love, and a company built on the suffering of others. And you, the son I abandoned, grew up to be the man I pretended to be. Brilliant. Principled. Actually saving lives instead of just claiming to. The kidney you gave me kept me alive long enough to face what I'd done. To stop running from the truth. I'm grateful for that, even though I know gratitude means nothing coming from me. You were right about everything. I am a monster. But you're proof that monsters don't create monsters. You chose to be better. I wish I could have been the father you deserved. But I'm glad you didn't need me to become who you are. Your mother would be proud. Maxwell. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't possible. Understanding didn't erase the damage. But standing in that clinic, surrounded by families getting the care my mother had been denied, I realized something. Maxwell's kingdom had fallen. His empire was dismantled. His name would forever be associated with fraud and cruelty. But from the ashes, something good had grown. My mother's legacy wasn't suffering. It was this, a place where no one would be denied the care they needed. Where no child would watch their parent die from something preventable. Maxwell Cole had taken everything from us. And in the end, I'd taken everything from him. But more importantly, I'd built something he never could, something that actually mattered. That wasn't revenge. That was justice. And it was enough. 5 years later, the Sylvia Cole Memorial Foundation now operates in 17 cities. We've provided free kidney screenings to over 50,000 people and funded 347 transplants. Nathaniel, Vanessa, and Beatrice each reached out over the years. We're not family, not really, but we're cordial. They've built lives separate from the Cole name, and I respect that. I still perform surgery. Still save lives. But my real work happens in the foundation, making sure no one else suffers what my mother suffered. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I think about Maxwell. About the man he could have been. About the waste of a life spent chasing wealth instead of meaning. And then I think about my mother, her strength, her kindness, her unwavering belief that people could be better than their circumstances. She was right. I carry Maxwell's kidney, his DNA, his genetic legacy. But I carry my mother's heart. Last week, a woman came into the clinic with her 6-year-old son. Stage 3 kidney disease. Treatable, but expensive. Her insurance had denied the claim. I looked at her face, the exhaustion, the fear, the desperation, and saw my mother. "We'll take care of it," I told her. "All of it. You won't pay a cent." She cried. Thanked me over and over. I thought about Maxwell, about the choice he'd made when my mother needed help. The choice to turn away. To protect his wealth. To value money over life. And I thought about the choice I'd made, to save him despite everything, knowing that saving him meant destroying him in every way that mattered to him. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. Giving him the kidney. Executing the plan that dismantled his empire. I don't. Maxwell Cole lived long enough to see everything he built crumble. Long enough to understand exactly what he'd done. Long enough to know that the son he threw away had become everything he'd only pretended to be. He died knowing I'd beaten him not by becoming like him, but by being exactly what he could never be. Someone who actually gave a damn about other people. The little boy with kidney disease, his name is Christopher, starts treatment next week. His mother sent me a card with a drawing he made. 2 stick figures holding hands. One labeled, Doctor, and one labeled, Me. I pinned it to my office wall, right next to my mother's photograph. Maxwell's legacy is ashes and scandal, a cautionary tale about greed and cruelty. My mother's legacy is Christopher and the 50,000 other people who got a chance she never had. In the end, that's the real inheritance. Not money. Not revenge. Not even justice. But the choice to break the cycle. To take the pain we've been given and transform it into something that heals instead of harms. Maxwell gave me life, then spent 30 years trying to pretend he hadn't. I returned the favor. I gave him life, then made sure he spent his last days understanding exactly what that life had cost. We're even now. The debt is paid. And I'm finally free.